So as I said, our next major topic then is email, sending email. Now we're going to look at two basic scenarios. First of all, we've talked about our authentication and authorization system last week. So one of the things that you clearly saw there is the fact that we need to verify people's email address they're using to log in, right? So normally the thing is you send an email to the address, they get a link that they can click on. It times out after a certain amount of time. If they don't, verify within a certain time period, then they have to do the whole thing over again and so on. But it depends on sending an email, right? Even for a forgot password, okay? So that's the email functionality we need for the identity security system, authorization and so on, right? Authentication. And then, of course, if we can send email, why wouldn't we want to be able to do that for our production as well? In other words, maybe something in our application calls us to reach out, all different kinds of apps might have different reasons. Maybe you're letting everybody know about a sale coming up if you're a retail outfit or things like that, right? Whatever the case is, there's a reason obviously for sending email, right? So we're should have time to get into that one as well. But let me just move down here. So we're starting off with this identity security, okay? So just adding email service strictly for this system. Now, the truth is, I don't know if I've pointed out, I think I've mentioned it before. If you go into your project into areas under identity, it's almost empty. There's virtually nothing here. The reason for that is all of the pages, and there's dozens upon dozens of them, they're actually in a compiled format in a Razor class library, right? And they just get pulled out when required, when needed, and incorporated into the application then, right? Now, there is a way that we could scaffold them all into here so we could modify them if we needed to. But you know what? I'm not going to go down that road just yet, okay? We'll come back and revisit that later. All right, but it is in those pages that we actually have the codes for sending email. We just have to provide the facilities, you might say, to allow us to actually send the email itself, right? So I have a bit of a PowerPoint to talk about it, and then we'll get into a code example as well. And I've got a PDF file here on how to get a free account set up and a very useful utility, you might say, online that we're going to find useful to use as well. So without further ado, let's get into our PowerPoint itself. Okay. So sending mail from .NET Core. Now, as I say here, any type of project, anything you're doing with .NET Core, the same basic approach works, right? So it's not just for ASP.NET MVC. All right, bit of a history lesson. You know me, I like to go back and kind of give the historical perspective on things. So going way back to the early days of .NET Framework, they added this namespace, system.net.mail, right? Readily available, always there, easy to use solution. We used it for many, many years, and away we went. Then along came, of course, a number of years ago now, .NET Core, right? Which has now since merged in with .NET Framework, and we just call it .NET, right? But when .NET Core came out at first, it was not available anymore. It just was not ported over at that point in time. And that lasted right through 1.0, 1. Right up through, and so on. Finally, yay, .NET Core 2.0 came out, and they finally brought it back. They finally implemented system.net.mail into there. Oh, we were all so happy. But then very soon after, it was deprecated. There it was gone, okay? And you can click that. I'm not going to take time now, but you can click that link, go and read about some of the history and the documentation for that, and so on and so forth. All right. So what do we have now? Okay. Well, as we've seen, much of our work these days, we install various packages, NuGet packages, right? So as a new solution, we could choose any of these. Now, I'll start on the right, a Fluent email. Okay. Very easy to implement. But it is limited somewhat in comparison to some of the other choices we have. If you're going to use different email providers like Mailgun, SendGrid, and so on, there's specific packages for them as well, right? Next over is MIMEKit. As it says here, considered pretty much the best library for doing email from .NET, okay? .NET Standard now as well, right? And then sitting on top of MIMEKit, we have MailKit, right? Does it all, does it well, and it actually uses MIMEKit to actually do the actual grunt work involved, right? So we're going to go right to that. We're going to focus on using MailKit as our solution going forward. Okay, so, but that's not all. because to actually send the emails, you have to have an email server, an SMTP server, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, unless my mind is playing tricks. That's what it stands for, okay? So you might be, like if you're building an application for a client, they might already have their own SMTP server, and you can just get the settings to use, and away you go, right? Very, very easy then for you. That's often not the case unless they're a fairly big outfit then, right? But maybe whoever they get their internet service from, okay, they might have an SMTP server you can tie into, right? And so on and so forth, right? Other choices, obviously there are things like Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, and so on, okay? Now, I'm going to mention this again, I probably will, but in the olden days, even just a few years back, not all that long ago, you could just, you go in and make a new account, whether it's Outlook or Gmail, just sign up, make a new email address, authenticate once, right? Get a password, and you could just use that in your code and have your app send all the emails you wanted using that username and password. Well, those days are gone, okay? It was just too easy for people to spam the world doing that. But what they've come out is sort of a stopgap, or what they call app passwords or application passwords. So you can still go out and create a new Gmail or Outlook, right? And then once you have configured on that account you create two-factor authentication, then these services figure, okay, we know enough who you are, right? That we're going to allow you, you can go in and under security settings somewhere, find a spot to generate an app or application password, okay? It'll be a randomly generated gobbledygook password, but you can use that instead with the account as you configure your SMTP settings, right? And then they will let you get away with actually using that to send email right from your application, okay? But you have to have that two-factor authentication so they can basically be confident that they know who you are and track you down and if you start spamming the world, right? Okay, well, just a warning about that, though. Using app passwords, they've all said they aren't sure they're going to how long, and they will be deprecated at some point in the future, right? They're strongly encouraging us all to use a better approach. Okay, using OAuth, for example, and there's different commercial services, okay, SendGrid, Mailgun, right? By the way, the default in Azure is SendGrid itself, and you can sign up for a free trial. Just be aware that the free trial is limited to 60 days. Now, I believe Mailgun doesn't have a time limit on their free trial. So that's another option you can explore in the future. I think what they do is they just limit how many emails you can send and different things like that as well. So there are a number of choices and approaches you can do, right? We're going to take an even simpler approach in many ways. As we're first learning, I think it's the absolute best approach. By the way, before the end of the course, I do hope to circle back and do a demonstration using an app password and getting that set up and working. All right, code time. Yeah, okay, let's get down to actually looking at code. So we decided we were going to use MailKit, right? It's a NuGet package we just install, okay? Now, just a note here, I'm comparing the easy way or a better way, right? You can just use it directly in code, okay? It only takes a few lines of code to get up, create an email address, and send it off, basically, right? But of course, that's not very good programming design, so we'll definitely make sort of an abstraction layer, create some view models, some utilities, and so on. And that way as well, we can easily swap out, use a different tool or a different package later on as well, right? But just to look at it simply, just a screenshot showing even a few lines of code. Let's just look at it here. With a few usings necessary for MailKit and so on. Then you see at the very top, hey, you just make a new MIME message, right? Then you can go to that and add to the from address, a mailbox address, add to the to address, okay? Yeah, passing names and emails and so on. Define a subject, a body. By the way, the body can be plain text, it can be HTML, and so on and so forth, right? Then, okay, you new up the actual SMTP client, right? Set a couple of options there, connect to the server, authenticate using a email address and a password. That's where, you might even just use, say, an Outlook or a Gmail address and then that app password, for example. Then you just do .send and disconnect, right? So it's really not that difficult to actually send email itself. But, we're going to do it a little bit more professional approach than that. So the right way, what I have here is a link to a really nice tutorial, simple, easy to follow, and most of the code that we're going to actually implement in our demo is based on this tutorial here. Now, for whatever reason, okay, this tutorial is on .NETCoreTutorials.com. For some reason, they have not renewed their security certificate. So my link, I tested it before class, and it was set up with HTTPS, and of course, it gets blocked, right? Because they don't actually have a valid certificate. So in my email, you've noticed I've changed it to just HTTP. So if you're nervous about that, then don't click on it. Hey, I'm going to be brave because I've used this tutorial site for a long time, and I trust them, okay? So here we are at our .NET Core tutorial. So feel free to look at this. It goes through lots of examples and using SMTP and POP and so on, right? So it goes above and beyond what we're actually going to do, because for one thing, we're only going to be worried about sending email. That's all we're concerned about at this point in time, okay? All right. It is actually, the system is capable of doing much more than that. Okay, so let's get into our demo now. I could stop and start the recording, but it's not too long yet. So step 25, code, right, for identity send email. So I've got the file open here. I'm just going to bring it over because I got a few general points to talk about at the beginning, okay? There I'm waxing about the history of being able to once use these easily, right? For security concerns, none of them allow that anymore. There is a workaround, as I said, using application passwords, but that could end at any time as well, right? Our focus is on sending email. That's all we're worried about at this point in time. You can also configure receiving, reading email, and so on, but that's beyond the scope of what we have time to think about in this course, that's for sure, okay? All right, so this is the namespace right here, Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity UI Services. In there, okay, which you'd have to actually scaffold all the hidden identity views and everything to see, there's an interface defined for an email service, right? All you need is the email address, and that's what we use for the verification, forgot password, reset, and so on and so forth, okay? So it's already defined. We're not going to have to do that. All we have to do is implement the interface. Implement the interface that's already there using an email provider we have configured, right? Okay, so what I suggest is start by changing that option. Now, at the very beginning, when we started to add the identity system, I said, hey, set this require confirmed account, okay, to false, just so that we don't actually have to have that and worry about that yet. I said, we'll get to that when we finally get to the point, sorry, I see I'm missing a space, when we finally get to the point of worrying about email. So maybe I'm going to do that first of all. I'll move my copy paste over the second. Here's Visual Studio, right? So that is right in program.cs right here, okay? Where add default identity, we had the here, sign in, require confirmed account. If I set that to true, I'm just going to run so we can see what actually happens here. Okay, while it's coming up, I'll mention that there is, I'm going to copy and paste the link from my copy paste file. I'll get ready to have that up here in the browser in a moment. So I'm going to get that open. Okay, account confirmation, password recovery, and ASP.NET Core. So again, another resource for you to look through. You can even generate QR codes, for identity and so on, so they can scan it, click the link to, register and confirm and so on and so forth. So there's lots of good fun stuff you can explore there as well. But in the meantime, let me just register here. I'm going to register. I'll go with my college account, okay? I have to make up a password, PA55W. Yeah, you know it, right? Same one we're using for everything. Okay, I will register. Oh, there, you see? So right in, see this account, register confirmation? Those are views. You go and look in the folder, you won't find this view there, right? It's coming out of that Razor class library. But register confirmation, hey, this app does not currently have a real email sender, okay? And you can see these docs. So if I right-click, open that in a new tab, right? So here it goes through all that information that you might want to read about and how to get it set up and so on. It has a demonstration using Mailgun or SendGrid, configuring SendGrid, and so on and so forth, right? Okay. All right, so coming back here. Now, what this does allow us to do, normally this would be emailed, but I can just click here. Boop, there we go. I confirmed my email. So it's lying. Obviously, I did not confirm my email, right? But it allows me to fake it. In fact, I can prove that here. Let me stop running, though, for a second. If I go down to Tools and our SQLite Compact Toolbox, okay. Oh, I don't know. I've got so many here. Let me remove all these to make sure I'm getting the right one. So I'll click my plug. There we go. So if I come to my tables, ASP.NET users, let's edit top 200 rows just to see the data. So there's a new account I just registered. And look at that. Email confirmed is set to 1, right? It would have been 0, but I clicked that link and in code it set it to 1. So that's the little workaround that was already there in Visual Studio. But we are now going to actually get our system configured to send email. So we'll be able to do it ourselves. So anyway. All right, so it mentions SendGrid, okay, using it as a sender. Now, it's not that difficult. I'll be honest with you. It's not trivial, but it's not very difficult. There is a free account, but it is limited to 60 days. So if you think about it, maybe you want to get things configured so that next term, while you're working on your community-sponsored project, that you can, have your app set up to use email. Well, if you start your free trial right now, it's going to time out before you actually are anywhere near ready to use it. Right, next term. So that might not be the best idea. All right. Okay. Yeah. The same is true of OAuth. Okay. You'll see that mentioned a lot in the documentation instead of this account password business, app password, right? You can go to use OAuth. Okay. It's another way to provide authentication. And actually, that's what they're trying to push us towards using, right? So feel free to play around, but we're going to leave that alone for now as well. I suggest Mailtrap, okay? That's what I think we should start off by using. Why? A lot of advantages to using Mailtrap. As we're first learning about all this, okay, one of the things you've got to be so careful of with sending email, the world very much frowns on people who spam the world, right? Even if you do go to the trouble, you're getting an app password set up so you can send from your Gmail or Outlook account or whatever and actually have it send email successfully. Well, I tell you, the minute you start sending email to invalid addresses so they bounce back, in very little time, you will be blocked, okay? And your account will get locked, and that is it. You'll get a big rap on the knuckles, right? So we avoid all those kinds of issues with Mailtrap. What does it really do? It doesn't actually send the email, right? Well, it does in a sense. It sends the email, but it traps it, and it comes into our common inbox that we configure inside of Mailtrap. This has a lot of advantages. It avoids our account getting banned in any way, shape, or form, right? And at the same time, we are free to send email to all kinds of bogus addresses. Right? Which, let's face it, right now we have seeded hundreds of users in our application, right? All of them with an email address, and none of them are legitimate, okay? So if we want to practice sending an email out to 50 people, patients at our medical office clinic, well, in no time, if I actually tried to send those real emails, would it take before I was completely banned and my account was closed down, right? So this way, we can actually confirm that all those emails do indeed go out. It's just that they only go out within the realm of the Mailtrap itself, right? Okay, so I'm going to move this off to the side for a second. Going back to Brightspace for a moment. See, I have here a PDF file, right? I'll open it up in my own. So it kind of goes through setting up your free account with Mailtrap, right? So just go to Mailtrap.io, sign up for free, okay? You can use your college email account or your personal one. It's entirely up to you. I suggest using your college one, but it doesn't matter all that much, okay? Confirm your account, click the button, fill out the form, and away you go. But once you're in, what we're going to focus on, you'll see on the left, there's sandboxes. And you can create actually multiple sandboxes, okay? I just called mine My Inbox, okay? Because that was, I think, the default name it suggested anyway. So the idea is that by using the configuration settings it provides, all the emails you send will come into this one common inbox, right? And so we can go and read them there, all the links that are there, we can click on to verify, email accounts, et cetera, right? So it's a fake SMTP server, right? But it allows us to do all the testing we need without stepping on anybody's toes out there in the real world of SMTP mail, right? So it will generate a set of credentials for you, okay? So just write them down, copy them, whatever, right? It'll look something like this. So here's the host address, the port, okay? It'll give you a username and password, right? And that's all you really need, okay? Even all this is pretty much optional, okay? Then what we do is inside of our app settings JSON file, you'll create something like this, email configuration, specifying the server, the port, the from name. Now that you can put whatever you want. So it's my medical office example we'll use. So I'm just going to say medical office as a from name. And the username and password, well, those are the ones that are shown here, username and password, right? So you just configure that inside there, okay? And then, of course, there's a bit more to it, but that's basically for the configuration. And then you can just test sending email. And what it'll do is it'll come in here, you go into your sandbox, you'll see the email there, you can click on the link and read the email and away you go, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do. So, before you go too far along, take time to get your Mailtrap account all set up and you'll be good. Okay. So I'm going to actually go through this now and get this set up. So the first thing I'm going to do now in our demo, maybe I'll stop and start the recording because we are at 20 minutes.